Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hearts Touched, your haven for heartwarming and thrilling life stories.
It was a beautiful Monday morning. The warm spring sun cast golden light onto the city streets. People hurried about their activities, and there wasn't yet a crowd at the bakery. Liliane, the heavily made-up saleswoman, was bored, savoring her coffee from a plastic cup and recalling the previous day's successes. Then, an elderly lady approached the bakery. She was about 70 years old, dressed in an old, shapeless dress, an out-of-fashion coat from a century ago, and carrying a worn-out bag with torn handles. The poorly dressed woman looked at the sweets and price tags, counting the coins in her palm. She then approached and said, "Good morning. Excuse me, please. I wanted to buy bread, but I'm a bit short on money. Could you sell it to me at a lower price? I promise I'll bring the rest tomorrow. I'm so hungry." "Don't worry, I'll really bring the rest tomorrow. Please don't doubt it." Liliane made a face. She was tired of these beggars. They were always trying to get something for free. She responded curtly, "I'm not a millionaire, and I'm not selling anything to you." Just then, a very impressive lady, a businesswoman in her 40s, stepped out of a luxurious car. Her name was Eleanor. She always bought the most expensive and freshest products at this store. She was a very lucrative customer. The saleswoman immediately smiled at her, ready to serve her with the best standards. The rich woman was talking to someone on the phone. "Yes, Matthew, we'll discuss everything about the order at the conference. It's not convenient for me to talk now. Please prepare all the information." "Yes, in 2 hours." "Okay. And please connect me with Richard. We need to discuss a few things." While the lady was talking on the phone, the saleswoman began to literally drive away the poor old woman, telling her not to expect anything here. The saleswoman was sure the rich customer would be appalled by the old beggar. Liliane involuntarily admired this dazzling lady. She was dressed in very expensive and stylish clothes, a beige cashmere coat, suede boots, and a bag from a very expensive brand. She had light, impeccable makeup on her face, and her shoulder-length hair shone in the sun. The saleswoman thought enviously about the luck of some people. "I'll never live like that." Eleanor glanced at the old lady during the conversation, just a poor grandmother, obviously in need of money. Nothing special. The only thing that surprised her was a common pendant on the stranger's neck, a teardrop-shaped pendant made of real amber. The chain had a familiar pattern, one rarely seen anywhere. "I've seen this somewhere before," Eleanor thought casually, but the idea slipped away as she continued her phone conversation. The woman approached the bakery counter and greeted politely. "Good morning, Liliane. May I have a French baguette as usual, 3 cinnamon rolls with vanilla, and a couple of cream and sweet croissants for the girls, please." The saleswoman immediately handed everything to her, saying, "Good morning. Here it is. I've packed everything. I remember your preferences. Enjoy. Everything is fresh as always." Elena smiled and handed the money to the vendor. She put the sweets in a bag and started to leave the store. Suddenly, the vendor called out to her, "Wait! You've forgotten your change!" But the woman only replied, "Keep the change. Just sell some bread to that grandmother, please. I think she's really hungry. Have a good day." The saleswoman waited until the rich woman's car disappeared around the corner, then packed the cheapest bread and called the old lady who was timidly standing nearby. "Here, that rich woman paid for you. But please go now. Have a good day." The old lady thanked everyone warmly. "Thank you so much. There are still good-hearted people in the world." The saleswoman carefully placed the rest of the money in her wallet, thinking, "That's enough for this beggar, but I have kids to feed." Eleanor arrived home. She'd just returned from a business trip, and her 19-year-old daughter ran to greet her. Mariana immediately hugged her mother. "Hi, Mum. I missed you so much. I smell cinnamon. Did you buy my favorite pastries?" How was your trip? Elena kissed her daughter. I missed you too, dear. Why aren't you at the university? I just came to take a shower and change clothes. Then I have to go to the office. I have so much to do. The girl replied sadly. Classes start later today, but it's always like this. You just got home, and you already have to go back to work. At least eat something. I'll warm up some soup and make coffee for you. I know you'll be eating all day again. Eleanor smiled. Thank you for your care, dear. Please save one of the pastries for Teresa. By the way, where is she? The daughter moved around the kitchen and answered, She went to the market this morning. You know her, always needing fresh produce, and you know how much she loves to fish. Eleanor took a shower, had breakfast with her daughter, dressed in a fresh blouse and skirt, and waved goodbye to Mariana before heading to work. Her day was scheduled minute by minute. After all, she owned a successful transport company. It was a small company with only 6 trucks, but the profits were good. It had taken many years to reach this point. Most importantly, she had bought high-quality trucks to ensure everything ran smoothly. She had to personally oversee all processes. Today, she thought she'd work only a few hours, but she had to deal with many problems. It was not uncommon in her profession. Anything could happen on the road. On her way home, Elena stopped by a small cafe. It was always quiet and cozy, and most importantly, never crowded. She liked to sit there in silence before diving into her tasks. She always ordered coffee and a creamy dessert, savoring them slowly while reflecting on her life. For some reason, she thought of that old lady with a pendant. Eleanor imagined the piece of jewelry in detail, focusing on it until memories started flooding her mind. She found herself standing at the doorway. It was raining outside, and she held her grandmother tightly. She made a small face and opened the window. Why are you here? I didn't invite you. What do you want? Eleanor pleaded. Dorothy, please give shelter to me and my daughter. We had to leave our rented apartment because we can't afford it anymore, and we have nowhere else to go. I don't even have parents. I'm an orphan after all. Mariana is your granddaughter. I'm begging you. Let us stay at your house for a while, at least until I find some other place. Dorothy's husband, Peter, glanced out the window, ready to let her grandmother into the apartment because she stood there with the baby in her arms, drenched in the cold rain. But Dorothy started shouting hysterically, Get out of here! You took our son away from us, and now you want our house. Raphael died because of you. Solve your problems on your own. I don't want to see you here. I don't even know if she's my granddaughter. And the enraged woman slammed the window shut, indicating the conversation was over. Eleanor stayed a little longer, hoping for mercy, but eventually she headed straight to the train station. She had nowhere else to go. This story had started so sweetly. Eleanor was overwhelmed by memories again, and tears began to roll down her cheeks. She grew up in an orphanage. She was lucky. That orphanage was small and quite pleasant. The city mayor supported and supervised it, so no one was mistreated there. The caretakers were strict, but the teachers were very professional. They taught the girls efficiently and frequently took them to town for various exhibitions, circuses, and cinemas. There were even hobby clubs for cooking, soccer, sewing, and foreign languages. From a young age, Eleanor had good mathematical skills and an excellent memory. Her teachers praised her and awarded her various prizes. After graduation, they helped her get into one of the best universities, the Faculty of Economics and Management. But when she moved into the room provided by the state for orphans, she wasn't so lucky. Her neighbors were always drinking, smoking, and partying. It was very noisy, making it impossible to live and study there. So, like everyone else, she stayed in a student dormitory and rented out her room to the same man who drank. After all, she needed money to live during her university years. When some drunken guys tried to harass her, Raphael immediately defended her, making it clear to everyone that she was his girlfriend. Got it? Or does anyone want to object? Come on, don't be shy, speak up. Raphael was a tough guy. He had practiced boxing since childhood, so no one dared mess with him. Elena appreciated his noble attitude. She was happy he called her his girlfriend. From that night, the couple started dating. They were madly in love with each other. Raphael also studied economics at the same university. He was the top student in the faculty, the pride of the university. Intelligent and ambitious, even as a student, he had tried to start his own small business repairing phones and computers. His parents were successful. His father was the chief engineer at the local factory, and his mother was a manager. His family lived in a large, beautiful house in the city center. Raphael was very attractive. Many girls envied Elena, whispering behind her back, "That orphan. She snagged such a handsome guy. But what did he see in her? She's just an ordinary girl. She doesn't wear makeup or expensive clothes, and her figure is nothing special." They were wrong, because, to Raphael, Elena was the most beautiful girl. He couldn't stop looking into her deep blue eyes, touching her wheat-colored locks, and whispering words of love. He was fed up with arrogant, shallow girls who were ready to jump into bed on the first date. Their eyes were empty. All they talked about was expensive clothes. Elena was completely different. Soon, Raphael asked her to move into his rented apartment. He preferred not to live with his parents. Elena always wondered, "Why do you need to spend money renting an apartment? Your family has a huge house. I don't understand, Raphael." But he always replied evasively, "My mother is a very complicated person. I don't know how to explain. She loves me so much that she suffocates me with her care. She doesn't let me breathe." Elena dreamily looked at Raphael. "You don't understand how amazing that is. I would give anything for my parents to love me like that, but I'm all alone." Raphael hugged her tightly. "You are not alone anymore. Now you have me. I will be your protection and support. I love you, Elena." Their apartment was always perfectly clean. Elena quickly learned to cook and often delighted Raphael with new recipes. She didn't succeed at everything on the first try, but she did it sincerely and with love. Raphael's intentions were serious. He then invited Elena to dinner at his parents' house. She behaved modestly and respectfully, but despite that, she immediately felt a certain coldness and indifference from Raphael's parents, especially after mentioning she was an orphan. Raphael's mother, Dorothy, was especially rude, always trying to insult the girl. She repeatedly said it was unclear what kind of genes Elena had, and that she wanted grandchildren. But someone like Elena couldn't give birth to smart, healthy children. She said her son was supporting and feeding Elena, but Elena was just using him. Those words hurt Elena deeply. She often cried after these attacks from her future mother-in-law. Now she understood why her boyfriend didn't want to live at home. It was impossible to tolerate his mother. She was so possessive of her son that she would do anything to separate them. Elena thought disheartenedly, "How can we start a family if his mother hates me so much?" The only comfort was that Raphael always defended her. He had already sharply interrupted his mother more than once. "Stop talking to Elena like that. I'm ashamed of your behavior. Mother, we love each other, and we will get married no matter what. My girlfriend is my choice. So, please respect my choice. If not, you won't see me anymore." His father, furious, retorted, "How dare you talk to your parents like that? Where are you going to get the money for the wedding? Do you think your miserable university stipend will be enough for that? Where will you live? Your parents only want what's best for you and are trying to teach you how to live. But you're as blind as a sheep and don't see anyone but your poor Eleanor. I'm sure she's turning you against us. All orphans are the same, cunning and sneaky. She smelled money, and now she won't let it go." The young couple was so tired of these constant arguments that they actually stopped communicating with Raphael's parents and decided to achieve everything on their own. His mother would call occasionally, hysterically demanding that Raphael break up with that woman and return home immediately. But Raphael stood firm. He perceived that he could no longer obey his mother. It was his life, and she had no right to manipulate it. Eleanor decided to sell their room because it was impossible to live there anymore. They invested the money in Raphael's new business. They rented an office, bought everything they needed to start, and even had a modest wedding. It was so pleasant and fun. They had a barbecue, swam, sunbathed, and sang songs by the campfire. Then they kissed and loved each other until the sun rose. It was so romantic. Both remembered it as the best day of their lives. Initially, family life was very difficult. They were always out of money and had to deny themselves everything. But the couple did not get discouraged. They only worked harder. After graduation, Eleanor worked as an accountant during the day, but she secretly dreamed of starting her own business. However, at the moment, there was no money for that. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. The family lived peacefully, almost without arguments. They managed to buy a used car, and now Raphael was saving money for their own apartment. Additionally, he was offered a very promising position as the head of the sales department at a company specializing in rare industrial metals. They promised a good salary and excellent career opportunities. The man decided to take a risk. He had high hopes for this business, so he sold his small computer repair shop and invested the money in the company's shares, as the dividends promised to be good. But Elena was against it and tried everything to dissuade her husband. "Love, maybe you shouldn't be in such a hurry. Why sell the repair shop? Try working at the new place for a while and then decide if it's worth it or not." But Raphael explained to her enthusiastically, "Elena, don't you understand? I have a great opportunity to change everything in my life. I can't miss this chance. I've dreamed of a job like this for a long time. I didn't go to university for nothing. I've calculated everything. We'll invest our money, and by next year it will all pay off. We'll buy a nice apartment in the city center and take a trip abroad. Trust me, dear. I've had a knack for lucrative businesses since university." You know, the woman was used to always supporting her husband. So she agreed with his decision, but her heart sensed trouble. It felt like stepping off a cliff into the unknown. And then another important event happened. Elena realized she was pregnant when she brought home the ultrasound photo with a tiny dot where the baby was. Her husband nearly burst with joy. Raphael was extremely happy. He had always dreamed of having children and wanted a large family. He began to care for and protect his beloved even more. He worked harder, often stayed late, went on endless business trips, and frequently didn't get enough sleep. The man wanted to show his best side, to be noticed by his bosses and get promoted. But Elena was very worried about her husband. She saw that he had taken on too much responsibility. Raphael was getting worse. He lost a lot of weight and had dark circles from exhaustion. She tried to tell him, "Stop, my love, please stop." But he wouldn't listen. And lately, he was always pensive, thinking about something. But he didn't want to share his worries and responded briefly, "Don't worry, dear. It's just a little misunderstanding at work. Things will get better soon. How is our baby doing in Mommy's tummy? Let me listen. I can't wait to see our baby. Imagine how it will be to stroll with the stroller. Kiss our baby. Unfortunately, Raphael was not destined to raise his baby. No one expected a tragedy to strike the family that night. Everything was as usual. Elena was waiting for her husband to return from work, setting the table and doing household chores. She kept checking the clock. He should have arrived by now. She continued waiting, but her husband didn't come. The woman got nervous and called him, but his phone was unavailable. Elena paced anxiously around the kitchen, went outside several times and waited for him. But it was already night, and her husband still hadn't arrived. Terrible thoughts invaded her mind. Where is he? Why is his phone off? This has never happened before. What if something bad happened? I hope he comes back soon. I'm so scared. But in the morning, the dreadful phone call came. Her beloved had died. His body was found that morning in one of the company's underground garages. He had fallen asleep in the car from exhaustion and died from the exhaust fumes. Elena couldn't believe it. This simply can't be. Yesterday my husband kissed me before going to work, and now he's gone. When Elena went to the morgue to identify the body, she fainted several times. She couldn't believe that the body they showed her was Raphael's. Elena cried out desperately, "No, this is not my Raphael. He'll be back from work soon. I even made morning coffee for him." "You are lying to me. Raphael couldn't die and leave me alone. This isn't true." They gave her a sedative. Everyone around felt compassion for the pregnant woman. But her mother-in-law blamed her for her son's death, yelling at the funeral, "You killed him! My son died because of you. You made him work tirelessly, and he fell asleep as soon as he got into the car. Damn you! I curse the day you came into our lives." Eleanor sobbed and covered her ears to avoid hearing the curses. She whispered, "How can you say that? I loved Raphael. I'm carrying our baby in my heart. Why are you saying such terrible things?" But Dorothea ran at her daughter-in-law with clenched fists, trying to attack her. No one knows how it would have ended if people hadn't restrained her in time. Elena felt unwell. She felt a sharp pain in her back and abdomen and slowly sat down on the ground. The ambulance took her from the cemetery to the hospital. She spent 3 weeks in the hospital and almost lost the baby. Her mother-in-law never visited the hospital. Elena was so hurt. "What happened? After my husband's death, I have no one left. His parents hate me and don't even hide it. They don't care about what's happening to me and their grandchild." So the woman didn't know where to seek help and compassion. When the widow returned home from the hospital, a new challenge awaited her. The first thing Elena did was go to the investigator. She wanted to uncover the truth. After all, her husband's death was very strange and suspicious. The expert revealed that the driver's door had been locked from the outside, and they didn't find any fingerprints on the company car's ignition key, not even her husband's fingerprints. But how was that possible? If he got into the car and started it, or if someone else had, why were there no prints? The woman had hoped that while she was at the hospital, the investigation would have clarified everything. But she was told indifferently that the case was closed, that it was an accident, and there was no reason to suspect anything else. Supposedly, the initial forensic exam was inaccurate. She argued and insisted on further investigations. But the investigators just said ironically, "Ma'am, please, don't shout here and calm down given your situation. You should think about your baby. But instead, you come to the police every day. We're very sorry." It's terrible to lose the family breadwinner, but everything is clear. Her husband was exhausted and fell asleep at the wheel. It happens. Elena couldn't prove anything, so she had to accept it and learn to survive on her own. It's terrifying when you're alone and no one cares about you, and you have a baby to take care of. Suddenly, you're responsible for 2 lives at once. The money that had been paid for her husband was just enough for the funeral and childbirth. She had no idea what to do next. No one visited her in the maternity hospital. It was so sad because other women were waiting for their husbands, or at least some neighbors and friends. Elena looked around, hoping her relatives would come to their senses, but realizing no one was waiting for her, the young mother walked slowly home to her tiny apartment. But worse news awaited her while she was in the maternity hospital. She missed a payment and was almost out of money. The landlord was furious and told her to leave. He didn't like troublesome tenants with babies. Elena and her newborn daughter had to leave the apartment. But she convinced the landlord to let her keep her belongings there for the moment. He agreed, as it wouldn't prevent new tenants from seeing the apartment, but warned her that she had only a few days to move everything out. So, the poor widow ended up at her mother-in-law's doorstep. She didn't expect much, but still hoped Dorothea would see her granddaughter, show some mercy, and shelter them. After all, her house was huge. There was enough room for everyone. But the evil, cruel woman's heart wasn't moved. She kicked her daughter-in-law out. But this time, she cursed the mother and newborn baby. It was so painful and humiliating. It was impossible to understand how there could be so much hatred in one person. Does Elena remember the despair that hit her at that moment? Where should she go with a baby? Where would they live? The woman had almost no money. So she went to the train station and started walking along the platform. She was desperate, holding her crying daughter and wiping her own tears. The woman was panicking. Where will I spend the night? What should I do with Mariana? Maybe my daughter and I shouldn't live anymore. Who needs us in this cruel world without Raphael? We'll meet him in heaven and be happy again like before. No one paid attention to the young mother. She was just waiting for something. And then, an old lady selling fruits and mushrooms on the platform called out to her. "Excuse me, miss, are you okay? Do you need help? You don't look well. You've been here for hours, but haven't gotten on any train." Eleanor was startled by the surprise. She came to herself, sat next to the old lady, and cried loudly. "I don't want to go anywhere. It feels like my life is already over. My husband died. I have no money to pay the rent. I have a newborn baby in my arms, and when I wanted to ask my mother-in-law for help, she kicked me out. What should I do? Tell me, does no one need me and my daughter? Why should we live then?" The old lady frowned and started packing her goods, saying, "What are you talking about, dear? You can do whatever you want to yourself, but your baby is so innocent. Your baby deserves to live. I understand your sadness. I once lost someone close and know how it feels, but you can't give up. You have to fight, not for yourself, but for the baby's sake. There's always a way out. You're still young. You have your whole life ahead of you. Don't even think about death." Eleanor laughed hysterically. "A way out? It's a dead end. Should I become homeless now? Sleep on the streets? I can't give my daughter such a pathetic life. My mother-in-law hates me, but I'm okay with that. But it turns out she doesn't even need her granddaughter. I have nowhere to go, absolutely nowhere. I'm alone." The old lady saw that the girl was decent, well-dressed, and obviously not a scammer. She was just in trouble. Problems can happen to anyone. Furthermore, she was on the edge of the abyss. She could make a decision at any moment. And then the elderly lady firmly said, "Let's go to my house. I'm renting a room in my home. It's small but clean and comfortable. I won't charge much. I don't rent it out for the money. I use the rent to help the girls from the local orphanage. I still work there as a nurse because my salary's low. One day, when I went to the cemetery, the poor widow told Raphael everything, crying at his grave. But the wind was the only response. Gradually, Elena regained her footing. Life began to improve. Her daughter started kindergarten, and she landed a good job as an accountant at a transportation company. Since Teresa helped with Mariana, Elena could focus on her career. She decided to achieve everything on her own. To challenge everyone, she would raise her daughter and give her the best education possible. Her daughter wouldn't go without. Therefore, her hard and diligent work paid off. In a few years, Elena became the boss's assistant, and when he decided to move abroad with his family, he promoted Elena to head of the company. That's when the money the woman had deposited in the bank a few years earlier came in handy. She managed to buy half of the company, becoming a co-owner. The owner trusted her honesty and business skills. She was able not only to keep the company afloat, but also to expand the business. She bought a 2-bedroom apartment in the city center, just as she and Raphael had dreamed, learned to drive, and bought a comfortable car. The woman had long considered Teresa a family member, so they still lived together. Mariana was very intelligent and studied diligently. Last year, she graduated from high school and entered medical school. The girl had dreamed of becoming a doctor since childhood. Elena realized she had already turned 43. She never remarried and couldn't fall in love with anyone after Raphael. He remained in her heart forever. Elena placed a beautiful monument on his grave, frequently visited the cemetery, sat on a bench near the wall, and told him everything. She believed her beloved was in heaven, listening to her, and that he was happy for her and their daughter. Elena also took care of Teresa. She always remembered who had saved her life and helped her in the most difficult moment. The years took their toll. The old woman often fell ill and was already frail. But Elena bought medicines and vitamins for Teresa and paid for her tests. In all these years, her grandmother had never worried about how her granddaughter was doing, never called to ask. Elena was deeply resentful and thought Dorothea was heartless. And today, Elena finally saw her, poor and begging in the confectionery. It was definitely her mother-in-law. The woman's first thought was, "Oh, fate is so just." Years ago, Dorothea didn't consider me human. She reproached me for being an orphan, and now she is begging for bread. She deserves it. Maybe she will finally realize how cruel she was to her son's family. Elena wasn't used to keeping everything to herself. She always shared everything with her family, and that unexpected encounter with her mother-in-law left her daughter's mother moved, bringing back unpleasant memories. The woman went home, and after dinner with her family, told them everything. Can you imagine? I didn't even recognize her. I was sure she was just a beggar, but the pendant caught my attention. It's her family's pendant. She never parted with it. Dorothea is obviously poor, begging for money to buy bread. Should I pity her? No, I won't. She never pitied me. She only cursed me. If it weren't for you, Teresa, Mariana, and I would be lost. You are my family, and I won't pity her. Mariana cautiously asked, "So, you met my grandmother. Well, I wonder what she's like. Do I look like her? How can I meet her, Mom? I'd like to know her." Suddenly, Eleanor felt irritated. "Dear, tell me why. There's nothing to talk about with her. She hurt me so much." "I won't seek her out, for sure." Mariana exclaimed, "Mom, but that's not right. You taught me to forgive and try to help people. Is this you, Mom? You don't need to be friends with her. But what if she really needs help?" Eleanor remained silent. She hoped her daughter would be on her side. But that wasn't what happened. Teresa remained silent for a long time, and then calmly said, "I understand you better than anyone, and you are right in everything. But I want to tell you something. I am not a saint either. I wasn't always alone. I had a daughter, Liliane. I loved her very much. We lived with difficulties, but she always wanted expensive jingles, nice clothes, and a cool phone. When Liliane was 16, she started hanging out with bad company, neglected her studies, and then began stealing everything from home to buy illicit things. I was stupid and didn't realize what that disease was. How terrible. I fought with my daughter, argued with her, and tried to reason with her. I was terribly ashamed to have such a bad daughter. That day, we had a fight. I cursed her too. I thought she was doing it to irritate me. And then Liliane ran away to friends' houses, and I never saw her alive again. It turns out that Liliane was hospitalized by video that night. If you knew how much I regret all these years for not hugging her, for not trying to understand her soul, but I had no idea it would be the last time I saw her. I don't know why I'm telling you this. It's up to you to decide whether to talk to your mother-in-law or not, but I know for sure that everyone can make mistakes, and everyone deserves to be forgiven. But, regardless of everything, a granddaughter has the right to see her grandmother. Eleanor spent the night thinking about everything. The first thing she did in the morning was head to the confectionery again, hoping to see Dorothea. Why? She didn't know, just to look into her eyes, to talk. The woman waited for over an hour, but the old lady never appeared. Then Eleanor went to her mother-in-law's old house. However, the strangers opened the door and informed Elena that the house had been sold long ago. They didn't know where the previous owners had gone. Elena grew worried. How could this be? Raphael's parents had such a beautiful home and were wealthy. What could have happened? Why had her mother become a beggar? Throughout the following week, Eleanor went to the bakery every morning, hoping to see Dorothea again. Finally, she did. Eleanor looked closely and recognized her, though she had aged significantly. There was no trace of her former beauty and arrogance, and her eyes were filled with despair. Elena sighed, her heart racing, but she had made her decision and approached the old woman bravely. "Hello, Dorothea. Do you recognize me?" The old woman looked at the businesswoman with surprise for several seconds before saying, "Elena, is that you? My goodness, you look beautiful. You've changed so much. It's so wonderful to see you again. And God, this is so hard for me to say. I wanted to apologize for so long, but I couldn't. The guilt is killing me. It's burning me from the inside. I realized too late that I ruined your life. Please forgive me, child." The old woman covered her face with her hands and cried softly. It was sincere and real. The ice in Elena's heart melted. She believed in her mother's remorse and asked quietly, "Dorothea, where do you live now? But other people have been living there for a long time." Dorothea responded sadly, "It's a long and unhappy story. Eleanor, if you want to come to where I live, then we can talk. If you refuse, I'll understand. I think you still hate me, and I understand why. It's my own fault." Eleanor took her hand. "Here's my car. Tell me where to go. Just wait a minute. I'll get some fresh pastries for us." When Dorothea led her grandmother to the small room in the run-down apartment, Eleanor was horrified. She immediately remembered the room she got after leaving the orphanage. The same drunken neighbors, the same rats and cockroaches, but the room itself was clean. Her grandmother had kept it tidy. Dorothea prepared something, and they sat at the table. Elena placed delicious pastries on a plate, and Dorothea couldn't resist eating them eagerly. It was obvious she was very hungry. Something turned upside down in Elena's soul. She felt such pity for this suffering woman. Dorothea sighed and began to tell her story. "You know, Pedro and I were always rich. I was used to a beautiful life and never wanted for anything. But after Raphael died, I went mad. I really convinced myself that you were the reason he died. I couldn't believe in such a death. And when I drove you away with my daughter, Pedro fought with me for a long time. We fought a lot. The problem was within me. Pedro begged me to come back, but it was as if I wasn't myself. The hatred filled my mind due to endless arguments and worries. Pedro started to get seriously ill. First, his heart began to fail. Then, the tests came back bad, and he was diagnosed with a terrible disease. It was a very insidious and terrible illness. We had to sell the house because chemotherapy and surgeries were so expensive. That's why we moved to this room. We fought the disease for 5 years, but even so, my husband died in my arms. He never forgave me for losing our granddaughter. Then I was completely alone. My pension is miserable. I don't even have enough for medicine and food. I can only buy the essentials: bread, milk, potatoes, and sometimes I don't even have enough money for that. You know, I don't want to live after losing everyone. Slowly, I recovered and realized what I had done. I pushed my son away from me, abandoned my granddaughter, and drove my husband to his grave with my behavior. I am a monster. You know, Raphael often comes to me in my dreams. He looks at me reproachfully and repeats the same thing: "Woman, how could you?" And I feel so bad, so ashamed of everything. Confessing now makes me feel a little better. Eleanor was shocked. It was as if she wasn't talking to her mother-in-law, but to a completely different woman, without malice or hatred, until her eyes changed. It was clear that her mother-in-law was sincerely remorseful. Meanwhile, Dorothea asked timidly, "How is my granddaughter? What is her name? She must be grown up now." "Elena, tell me a little about yourself. You are so beautiful. What do you do with your life? I suppose you're married." Elena smiled bitterly and talked about her work, about Mariana, and then added sadly, "I never remarried. I never stopped loving Raphael. There is no room in my heart for anyone else. Many times I see him in my dreams too. He hugs me and kisses me endlessly. And now I live for my daughter. You know, Dorothea, probably, if all the troubles hadn't fallen on me at once, I would have fulfilled all my dreams. After all, we only have one life, and we have to do everything in time. I was very angry with you. That's true. And even when I saw you near the bakery, honestly, I didn't even want to talk. But you know, my daughter showed more wisdom than me and said she really wanted to meet her grandmother. If you want, Mariana and I will visit you tomorrow, and I'll introduce you to her." I thought a lot about her words and realized that everyone can make mistakes. But now, I see you are sincere, and I believe in you because, Dorothea, we are family. We need to forgive each other, be friends, and help each other, not fight. The women hugged. Dorothea cried and hugged her granddaughter's head. "Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you for finding the strength and mercy to forgive an old, bad woman. You can't imagine how much lighter I feel, as if a huge weight has been lifted from my soul. Of course, come visit me whenever you want. I will be very happy because I have no one else but you and my granddaughter. Maybe we can start over. Be a family. I want that so much. It's so scary to be alone at my age." Elena touched her shoulder. "Of course, we can, Dorothea. We can start over." The resentment and bitterness that had plagued her for all those years began to diminish, and harmony and peace took its place. The next day, after work, she and Mariana went to visit Dorothea's grandmother, bringing a bag of groceries and a big cake. When Dorothea saw her beautiful granddaughter, "My sweet girl, you look just like your late father. You are as tall as Raphael. Your hair and face are exactly the same. Let me hug you." "Excuse me, Mariana, I abandoned her. I never visited. I was so wrong." Will you forgive your typical voice?" Mariana dried her tears and whispered, "Don't worry, I don't blame you in any way. All your fights with Mom don't affect me. You are my grandmother. Do you have pictures of Dad? Can I see them?" And I never saw them, but my mum told me a lot about him. She still loves him very much. But my mum told me a lot about him. She still loves him very much. We don't have photos, but I would like to know everything about Dad. Dorothea quickly opened an old cabinet and took out a dusty album. She flipped through the pages excitedly and showed her granddaughter. Raphael was a year old in this photo. Isn't he handsome? He was so chubby here. He loved to eat and never misbehaved. This is a picture we took when he went to school. Mariana smiled. Such an important and serious father. "Oh, who is this?" she asked. "This is your late grandfather, Pedro. Unfortunately, he is no longer with us. And here are your parents getting married, myself included. You know, we weren't invited to the wedding, but it was our own fault." She cried bitterly again. She felt deeply ashamed. She had nothing to be proud of. She realized she only brought sadness to her son. Mariana understood her condition and comforted her. "Don't worry, Grandma. All of this is in the past. Stop blaming yourself. Do you want to go to Dad's grave with us? The three of us will be happy to be together now that you and Mom have reconciled. And I also want to introduce you to Grandma Teresa. She is like family to me too. I love her very much. I think you two will also be friends. Don't cry, Grandma. You are not alone. Now we are with you." The old lady admired her granddaughter, her wisdom, and her kindness. "Mariana, I am so grateful to your mother for raising you to be such a wonderful person. Now, I am the happiest person in the world because I have you. And we will definitely visit your great-grandfather. All this time I only wanted one thing, to repent before my son, to beg for forgiveness. But I didn't dare." Since that day, Mariana took full responsibility for her grandmother. She visited her almost every day and brought her wisdom and gifts. As a future healthcare professional, she insisted on a full examination and helped in her grandmother's treatment to avoid living in such unbearable conditions. She could hardly sleep because of the neighbors, and it was scary to go to the communal kitchen. So the girl insisted that her grandmother move to her apartment. At first, Eleanor was cautious with the news. The unpleasant moments of the past immediately came to her mind. The woman was anxious and didn't know if they could live under the same roof. But at the same time, she realized that her daughter was right, and it was difficult for Dorothea to live in such a situation at her age. So she agreed. Her fears quickly dissipated. Her grandmother had changed a lot over the years. For many years, she immediately befriended her colleague, Teresa. They had a lot to talk about: knitting, cooking, gardening. Gradually, Eleanor also began to communicate warmly with her mother-in-law, talking without fear of tricks on her part. Now, a delicious dinner awaited them every night. The grandmothers did their best. They showered the family with cakes and soups. The atmosphere in the family was warm and friendly. Dorothea, Mariana, and Raphael frequently visited Raphael's grave. And every time the old mother cried, hugging her son's photo, repenting and asking for forgiveness. But she was infinitely happy to now have such a friendly family where everyone sincerely loved each other. Finally, her son listened to her and forgave her. Dorothea had a wonderful dream. Raphael didn't blame her like before, but smiled warmly and said, "Thank you, Mom. Now I am at peace." The woman woke up with a smile and immediately realized that it was a sign. Raphael was no longer angry with her. Her son had forgiven her. Now she felt peace in her soul and was proud of her daughter-in-law and granddaughter. And she wanted to dedicate the rest of her life only to them. They decided to rent an empty room in Teresa's house, save some money, and buy a big and beautiful mansion. And they decided to keep the apartment for Mariana when they all moved to the new mansion. There were no limits to their happiness. It was so spacious and comfortable. They adopted a big dog named Ptolemy, and Mariana found a cute kitten, Tom, and they liked taking care of the animals. The old ones liked planting roses in the garden and even made a small vegetable garden. They were so enthusiastic about it that even the ridiculous seemed to disappear and their strength increased. And Elena now loved to relax in the gazebo after a hard day's work, wrapped in a warm blanket, just enjoying the peace and tranquility. All the woman dreamed of was that her dear daughter was happy and that her beloved grandmothers were close for as long as possible. There was peace in her heart. Now, she frequently thought about how Raphael would be happy to see that the whole family lived together without fights. Frequently, in families, the closest and dearest people become enemies and hate each other, making life unbearable. But for harmony in the family, it is only necessary to take the first step to realize your mistakes and try to change the relationship. It is important to know how to forgive, ask for forgiveness, and not judge others harshly. Fortunately, our characters found the strength to fix everything.